So Stellar Blade is a Souls-like action-adventure game developed by Shift Up Studios and released in 2024. Basically picture what a mixture of Nier Automata and Dark Souls would look like, and you get the gist of the game. So yeah, to start off, I gotta say I came into this game pretty blind of what it actually was, and I was kind of surprised by how dark and philosophical it was. Especially because I felt like all I ever heard about this game was talk about the main character's outfits, or lack thereof. I mean, right off the bat, the game starts with these giant warships entering Earth's orbit and getting blown out of the sky while dropping escape pods that contain a bunch of elite soldiers, including our protagonist, Eve. I mean, it's a pretty brutal intro to the game, as you find that your entire squadron has been killed almost right off the bat, except for your commander, who very quickly gets gored while trying to protect you. Now, what is exactly killing your entire squadron, you may ask? So it's this race of borderline alien or demonic creatures that have infested Earth and have basically been implied to have pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. And yeah, the elite squads like yours have been sent to Earth with the task to kill what's known as Alpha Natibas, which are basically the strongest ones, in the eventual hope to find the Elder Natiba, which it's implied if they kill that, it may stop the whole infestation. So there's a whole bunch of twists and turns along the way that I'll be getting into here, and I'm not going to spoil the end, but there's a lot of revelations I have to talk about in order to make sense of this game. So if you'd like to go into the story blind, go ahead and skip here to my section about gameplay, but otherwise I'm going to get more into the story revelations. So you find over the course of the game a little bit of the backstory of this whole situation. Essentially, humanity used to use this super AI that made them highly advanced and made life convenient for them in almost every way. However, this AI eventually goes rogue and starts developing what it perceives as a superior form of humanity in the Androidos androids. And our protagonist Eve is actually revealed to be one of these androids along with all the other soldiers that were sent to Earth to fight the Natibas. But before the Natibas came about, the AI was actually working to snuff out humanity, and so a war broke out between humanity and the androids, but because the androids were superior and they were backed by this godlike AI, they had the advantage over humanity. So, in a last-ditch effort, humanity conducts a bunch of experiments trying to evolve themselves to a point where they can combat the androids, but this results in the creation of the monstrous Natibas that you end up fighting in the game. Yep, Natibas are actually mutated humans, and I presume animals as well, that are all part of some botched experiment that actually ends up kind of working and pushing back the androids, but at the cost of humans no longer really being human. Then there's a bunch more information about like a last pocket of humanity that still exists and the implications of you being a machine that was built to kill humanity but now actually trying to save them. But that's the overall gist of the game. A quick side note, there's a bunch of materials you find throughout the game that give you more information about the old world through notes and advertisements and whatnot. One particularly interesting point is that it's implied that the AI got the idea for this superior form of humanity through the form of androids from another company that developed androids for practical uses and personal uses. And this makes me think this is probably why all the androids in the game are extremely beautiful characters who are well endowed, let's say. I mean, I would think that if humanity was making lifelike androids, they would make them as aesthetically pleasing as possible and things would start getting really pervy real quick, as we basically see in most forms of media today. I don't know, it's just an observation that made me think maybe the developers weren't just making some protagonists in scantily clad clothing, but there was an actual purpose behind it. I mean, come on, we all know how most games are. But yeah, it provides reasonable context for a design choice that makes a lot of real-world sense despite the absurdity of the whole game. The story is pretty deep, with a lot of allusions to religion, Christianity in particular, and it asks a lot of questions about what happens when we lose faith in something and what it means to be human and the importance of that answer. I think that latter part is a motif that is constantly reinforced throughout the game, especially if you play the side missions that are worth your time. They're nice little condensed stories that show off the humanity of these different characters for good or for bad. I mean, it's an interesting story overall, but I just think it's another example of better in concept than it is in execution. I mean, it's an over-the-top game with crazy characters and set pieces and world design that you probably shouldn't think too much about. But I think my biggest gripe is that there are just a lot of really big revelations that are really important to the main plot of the game, and they just felt really strange when they happened. Or it just seemed like a way to shoehorn in some additional importance to characters because they haven't really had much to do up until that point. I mean, maybe it made more sense than I'm giving it credit for. I can be an idiot sometimes, but I just feel like it's a real bad sign when I'm playing throughout the game and I have multiple instances of, why did that happen? Why are they here? What just happened? Where did they come from? Who are they? So on and so on. Just to finish my thoughts on the story of the game, I think it does a great job of balancing absurdity and goofiness with real dark and emotional moments that create a unique tone and Just makes everything not too light and not too dark, which is always really appreciated in a story. But with that out of the way, the gameplay of this game is where it shines the most. So the game starts you off with your basic light and heavy attacks using your hair tie sword thing, and you got your parries and your dodges, typical action game stuff. But my favorite part about the game is that there is this constant sense of progression with the combat system where you're unlocking new combos, new special abilities, new defensive tactics, new weapons. It's really excellent. And initially I found myself never using these additions until enemies got more and more complicated and difficult, then I found myself using everything in my arsenal to defeat them. I mean, just to give an example, there are some boss fights at the end where you may have to block one attack, you may have to parry another attack, you may have to dodge backward against one attack, you may have to dodge forward against one attack, you may have to use ranged weapons against them, you gotta use your beta attacks, and you gotta use your burst attacks, and you gotta use your combos, and you gotta use your grenades, and then every now and then there's also a quick time event that pops up. It just gets pretty wild after a while. And yeah, the more used to it you get, the more badass it feels when you execute the combat flawlessly. Overall, it's just a clever combat system that's really brutal and difficult, but extremely rewarding and assures you never get bored of playing the game. I mean, I guess the only gripe I might have is I didn't really use the guns very much in normal fights because I don't know, it just didn't feel worth it, but there's some certain sections of the game where you have to use guns, and yeah, it adds to the utility of them. I also love when games make resources scarce enough that they're actually really important to collect, which this game does, and the level design makes it kind of fun to explore around and seek out every nook and cranny to find every bit of resource you can. It all just makes exploring way more enjoyable. I mean, I will say the platforming in this game's not the best ever, it's kind of stiff, but it's whatever, it's not a big hamper. There's definitely a lot of customization options in this game where you can make Eve fabulous with different hairstyles and colors and jewelry and whatnot, and outfits. And just a quick side note on the game, Eve makes some humorously robotic comments about how these changes in her appearance impacts her confidence in battle, which I'm sure a lot of female gamers might be able to speak to more than I can. Overall, it's badass and bloody gameplay that's reminiscent of hack and slash games from earlier generations, and has plenty of engaging mechanics beyond fighting. But I'd be remiss if I didn't include the boss fights as well. I mean, I love the boss fights of this game. They're very Dark Souls-esque in that way they balance fun to fight with incredibly difficult. And I gotta say, the last 3 or 4 boss fights were a huge difficulty spike. I mean, I may give the game a little crap for reusing bosses in a few instances, but that's typically on some side missions, so I won't be too harsh on them. But with that, that brings me to the quality of the game. I mean, I think it goes without saying that the graphics of this game are absolutely amazing, and the movement is incredibly fast-paced and highly fine-tuned. Really how I think I would describe the feel of this game is it feels like a old PS2 game having been remastered in the fact that it looks so great and plays so well, but there's still a lot of goofy jankiness to it. This is particularly noticeable in some of the dialogue cutscenes where a lot of the characters seem to have these very stock emotes and movements. I mean, sometimes it just made me laugh watching the way they talk about something and how their body language doesn't at all match what they're saying. Yes, I am bothered by that. I think that's a great idea. It's not a big deal, but it's pretty funny. The soundtrack during combat scenarios is this badass techno rock, whereas when you're exploring, it's more of like this sad, melancholic, peaceful music. It's very reminiscent of Nier Automata. The voice acting in this game is pretty good, especially Eve. Eve is great in this game, but a lot of the side characters, more iffy. I mean, dude, it's an overall excellent game that's very much worth your time. You just may have to look over your shoulder and hope that someone doesn't walk in at an awkward time when you're playing it. So for a story that is epic in its scope, but a bit clunky in the structure of its main through line, I would give Stellar Blade a 7 out of 10. As for its fast-paced and highly complex gameplay, I would give it an 8 out of 10 there. And for its beautifully realized world and creatures and enjoyable soundtrack, I'd give it an 8 out of 10 for its quality as well. So tallying that all up, that puts Stellar Blade at 23 out of 30, and it is now going to be my new number 2 on my games ranking list. And yeah, if I were a kid renting this from the rental store, I don't know that I'd go out and buy it, but I would rent it as many times as I needed to explore its world and finish the game. So, thank you again all for watching. I'm really trying to build this channel to something more, something that people can watch and get through their days with, like a lot of other YouTubers have done for me. So, if you like what I'm doing here, please hit the like button, I'd really appreciate that. If you have any thoughts about things I said, or any ideas for games you'd like me to review in the future, leave a comment, I'd also appreciate that. And if you want to see what I do going forward, go ahead and subscribe. Peace.